Zamina, are you ready?
I'm ready. Am I clear?
You are clear to see and your sound is a little shaky, so pull your mic a little closer.
Yes.
Okay. Kimberly, are you good?
I believe I'm good. Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Great.
Mita Malik, are you good?
I'm ready.
Okay, excellent. For everyone else who's joined us today, we are so honored and happy to have you here for this very important conversation. I would recommend for those of you who are able that you join us today in speaker view. We are expecting about 120 people today. And so if you want to see all your friends and colleagues, you can watch in gallery view, and then you'll get to see what I like to call Hollywood Squares or the Brady Bunch. But if you want to have a chance to see my brilliant colleagues speak, the best way to do that up close is going to be in what's called speaker view. So I am so honored to have everybody join us today. My name is Jill Bortek-Katz, and I am the CEO and founder of Assemble HR Consulting. And we are an organization that focuses on culture, conflict, communication, and change. And I spent 22 years working inside of organizations in the human resources and talent function, which is kind of incredible since I'm only 26. So you can all kind of work on that and figure out how I did that, but I kind of defied gravity. And I've spent the past 2.5 years doing the work I love the most, which is helping people find the very best of themselves in their careers. In the work I've done, one of the themes I've noticed, particularly with women and people that identify as women, is that in more and more of the one-on-one conversations I was having, I found that there were private stories of discrimination, of gender bias, of racial discrimination, and pain. Pain that so many women have experienced but never talk about. And in today's world, George Floyd, Breonna, even most recently, awful, awful stories, anti-Semitic stories, more and more is coming out in the news. And it's wonderful to see things getting louder voices. What's terrible is that these things continue to happen every day in our own workplaces. And many of these stories, particularly for women, are kept quiet. They're swept under the rug. They go unnoticed. Sometimes when they happen to us, we don't even realize they've happened. We question them ourselves, or we feel bad about them. We feel shame. Personally, I've had a few of my own stories, and I forgot about many of them, maybe on purpose. And over the course of the past few weeks, in speaking to some of my most impressive and esteemed colleagues, I realized that one by one, we all seem to have a story. And I brought together 3 brilliant, successful women who are brave enough to share a story with you today. And it's amazing to me that underneath some of the most successful people we know, there will be a story. This morning and yesterday, we did a little planning and we noticed a couple of things. The first is we're all nervous. I'm nervous. I'm really nervous. And I don't get nervous in front of a crowd, but it's scary to do this. We notice that no matter how hard we try, no matter how smart we are or educated, I will never, ever, ever know what it's like to be a Black woman. I will never, ever, ever be able to experience life as a Muslim woman or speak really intelligently about what it's like to be an Indian woman. These are three of my closest friends that I know well. The best I can do, though, is listen to their stories and share my own. And I hope you'll do the same, because that is how we can become more sensitive. And that is the best we can do in this environment. And so I'm going to start with my story. I have a very special role today as the moderator, but I'm also the white woman on the panel. And so as everyone looks at me, I hold what we all call white privilege. When you look at me, you see a white woman, and my life may seem easier than my friends on the panel that are brown and black. And when I walk out the door, and as I've grown up in my life, I've always grown up as a white woman. I am what one of my dear friends helped me call a majority minority. What you don't know when you look at me is that I am a Jew. And the minute I say out loud that I am Jewish, you may feel something different. You suddenly know something about me that you didn't know before. I am a minority. I'm a minority for whom anti-Semitism is growing, and it's becoming more rampant, violent. As a matter of fact, my own Jewish community in New Jersey was attacked virtually this past week. I am a Jew who has spent her entire life making decisions every day whether or not to show my minority or not. Because as a white woman, I get to hide it. And when I hide it, I feel protected and I feel guilty every moment of every day. The story I want to share is a couple of years ago when I was leading a very large team at a big company. My own team that I loved so much, I was close with all of them, they knew me so well. They decided to surprise my whole team, which was a large team, by sneaking into the office and decorating all of the office doors at holiday time. When I came into the office, my office had been decorated at Christmas time. And my office was decorated with a Christmas stocking and a Christmas wreath and all kinds of beautiful Christmas items, but they were blue and silver. And the team said to me, "We picked blue and silver for Hanukkah for you. And so you have a Hanukkah stocking and a Hanukkah wreath and a Hanukkah hat." And I was crushed. I was absolutely crushed. Because these are people I loved, and these are people that love me. But a blue stocking and a blue wreath and a blue hat is still a Christmas item, and Christmas was not my holiday. As a Jewish person, my feelings were really hurt, but I never said a word because I didn't want to hurt the people that were trying to make me happy. I struggle through this every Christmas season when people send me Merry Christmas gifts and ask my children if they've been good for Santa. I welcome you all today to a conversation that may make us uncomfortable. It may make us feel some pain, and hopefully give us all the opportunity to pause and question. You'll hear stories from my three colleagues, and then we have more questions than we can possibly get through that you submitted, and we hope to open it up as well. With that, I'm so proud to turn it over to my friend, Kimberly Miner.
Well, thank you, Jill, and thank you for sharing. That story just I had heard it before, but when I hear it today, it hits me in a really special place. So thank you for sharing. So I'm Kimberly Miner, and I am the founder and the CEO of Bumbershoot. And Bumbershoot, if you don't know, is a magic umbrella. And in my magic umbrella, what I do is I use my almost 30 years, and I know I'm only 32, so I'm of the same school as Jill, but my almost 30 years of experience in retail as a one and an only, because in retail, what I learned is that there are Black people who look like me, but generally they are in HR or in support roles. And I was in business roles. So I was a merchant, or I was the head of design. I was the head of product development and sourcing. And so I had leadership roles, but I was the one and the only. And so when I decided to make a change, I decided to focus on making sure that that wasn't someone else's story. And so Bumbershoot and my magic umbrella, I help leaders transform their corporate culture so that it is inclusive and it is collaborative, and that women and people of color can accelerate their careers, and we can create pipelines of talented people so that you can no longer hear, hey, you're the unicorn, because that is ridiculous and that is unacceptable in 2020. And yet it still happens. So that is who I am, and that's what I do. And the story I want to share is really about being that one and that only. And so I've been the one and the only my whole life in so many different ways. You know, I am an only child. I grew up as the only Black family in our neighborhood, and so much to the point where, and I grew up in a suburb of Philadelphia, but my mother had grown up in that same suburb, but in a different section. And she had driven past this house her whole life. And she wanted, when she got married, she wanted to move there and raise her children. And when she got married, she was actually in the position that she and my father could afford to move up, you know, into the avenues, because where we lived in the street, where if it was a street, then that's where the Black people lived. And if it was an avenue, that's where the white people lived. And so my mother had wanted to move to an avenue. And so they found this house on the avenue. It was the house she had looked at, and they went to see it. And my dad said, great, my wife wants this house. This is the house we're going to buy. And the owner, when they found out that there was a Black family looking at the house, and this was in the early 70s, and when they found out that a Black family was looking at the house, they wanted to be there. And they stood at the end of the meeting and they said, we would rather burn it down than sell it to niggers. And my dad, and this is why I am who I am, because my mom and dad stood there, looked him in his face. My dad went in his pocket, because at the time he smoked cigarettes. He pulled out his lighter and he said, here's my gift to you, because we're buying this house. And he got an attorney and he bought the house. And I was born and raised in that house, and I sold the house when my father passed away. And it gave me this resilience, right? And this grit, because little did I know that that was going to be my journey, right? As I went to school, I was the only one in my class. As I went to my career, I went to grad school, I was the only Black woman in my grad school classes. My first job when I was in grad school, I worked for a company you all might know. It's called Russ Berry, and they do stuffed animals, they do novelty items. And I'm not sure if you remember this, but they have these lips that are on legs that are bendables for Valentine's Day. Well, those are my lips, because I was the only, right? I was the only person of color, and the CEO in front of the whole art department said, what are you giving me? I want lips that a man would want. I want her lips. I was 22 years old, and I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say other than I was embarrassed. I felt like I know I hadn't been raped, but I felt like I had been assaulted, but I had no one to talk to because I didn't think anybody would care enough that this Black girl, look, you've got a job, right? Like you're a product manager, you know, and it continued, you know, and I've had story after story when I went through Macy's executive training program, and then I got into another position, and I was promoted very quickly because I worked hard and I'm smart, and I knew that. Like I knew that, but for some reason it wasn't always coming across. And so I had another situation where I had an intern, and again, I'm the only one of color, and this intern was a young woman of color, and I could see her going down a path that was not going to work for her. Because I had been there before. And I said, let me take you to lunch. Let me help you. Let me give you some tools that I don't think anyone's given you that will help your career. And she went back and told one of the white buyers that I had taken her to lunch and what I had told her. And that buyer said, well, who is she? She's just a Black buyer. She's not going to go very far in her career. Why would she tell you that? And so it has been that way. And all the stories aren't horrible. I've had a very successful career, but I will say that I'm exhausted because every time I show up, I have to represent my whole community, right? And my concern is that if I don't do well, then that means there won't be an opportunity for somewhere else because they'll say, hey, we tried it, it didn't work, right? And I have worked very hard. And you know, my last job, I was a senior vice president and I was responsible for a $4 billion business. And I'm proud of that. But I'm at the point where it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be that I'm the only one. And so I had this happen this morning, and I wasn't planning to talk about it because I didn't know it was going to happen, but I was on a call earlier this morning, and I was on a panel, and there was a Black man on the panel, myself, and two other white people on the panel. And throughout my career, because I've been the only one, I have had to work extra hard and been very tired by the end of the day because I've had to work hard to have a voice. Not because I don't have one, because as you can tell, I definitely have a voice and I definitely have an opinion. And I've never been told I don't have that. However, in those settings, I always felt like maybe I was losing my mind because I would say something and I'm like, well, did the wind blow? Because they didn't hear me. I'm gonna have to repeat myself. And I always felt like I had to repeat myself or be louder or assert myself, or you know, there was something what I wasn't doing that I had to repeat myself to be heard. And this morning, and it touches me so much because I'm on this panel with these other people, and they asked me to speak about something. I spoke about it, and then the gentleman who was making the presentation, he repeated what I said. And he actually said, oh my goodness, as Kimberly said, or later, and he said, as noted by Kimberly, which I thought was a very good point. I didn't have to repeat myself this morning, but there was a Black man on the panel and he heard me. And I wrote him a note and I said, I just want to thank you for hearing me because it has taken me 30 years to be heard without repeating myself. And so I just want to thank you for allowing me to tell you my story about one and only. It's lonely, but I'm going to change that. So thank you for the opportunity.
Kimberly, thank you so much for bravely sharing your story and talking to us about the one and only. I'm so honored to now introduce to you my amazing friend, Mita Malik, to talk to us about allyship.
Thank you, Jill, for your story, and thank you, Kimberly. I start by saying I'm in week 18, day 3. I am self-quarantining with 5-year-old and 7-year-old and my husband in 1,500 square feet in Jersey City, and we're still here. So that's how I start. I hope everyone's doing well. I'll start at the beginning. I have 2 parts to my story. The first part of my story is that I'm the proud daughter of Indian immigrant parents. My younger brother and I were born and raised here outside of Boston. And I was born and raised in a place and a time, which you could say is true about many parts of the world, where it was not cool to be Indian, it was not cool to bring Indian food to school, it was not cool to listen to Bollywood music, it was not cool to wear Indian jewelry. And as a result, I was heavily bullied, both physically and verbally growing up. Started with name calling, started with things being thrown at me and my hair, went on to racial slurs that were on our driveway, on our lawn, the N-word, the S-word. I didn't have any knowledge of what that meant at 12 years old, but I knew that as an adult now that those were considered hate crimes, and the town did nothing about it. My parents didn't have money to actually remove those words, so they stayed there for a long time. It escalated to my freshman year in high school, where I was really excited to take a class called Intro to Physical Science. And there was 2 white boys who had been bullying me for some time, and I had hair down to my knees. I had a single braid, which with the pandemic, it's going back there. But they would physically yank my hair in the hallway and hold me back. And they decided that day that I would set my hair on fire. And they actually lit matches, and they kept tossing them in my hair. I didn't notice this because they were behind me. But my lab partner, who hadn't spoken to me the entire time, said to me, "Oh my God, your hair is on fire," literally fire. And so that, I mean, the damage that does to your psyche, my hair clearly is fine, but the damage that did to my psyche is sort of, it's still here with me today. I was reading a piece this morning that I posted on LinkedIn that I want everyone to take a look at. Viola Davis was featured in Vanity Fair, and I had the enormous honor and privilege of working with her in 2016 when I led the Vaseline Healing Project at Unilever. And she has a quote that she talks about, and it says, "When I was younger, I did not exert my voice because I did not feel worthy of having a voice." And that really resonated deeply with me, because I had been bullied for so long, but I did not find my voice. And I could not use my voice, because if I used my voice, I felt like I would be further attacked. So as I have now come into corporate America, and as Jill many times will call me a rock star and how successful I am, I still look back at my younger self and I could wish I could tell her the bullying would stop, and it hasn't, right? So my hair has never been set on fire again physically. And I think what you will hear from all of these stories is there is still the figurative setting hair on fire, or setting an individual on fire, or, you know, sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Something that we have to unlearn and undo, because names can have devastating consequences. So as I've come into my career in corporate America and have found my voice, the story that I want to relate back to, which is a story that continues on bullying and harassment, is the story of my name, and is the story of my first assignment in corporate America. I went to Duke for business school. I was super proud to get in, really excited to start my career in marketing, and I had decided that I would reclaim my name. So many people, if you know me, you might not know. We've talked. You might not know that my full name is actually Madhumita Malik. Madhu is honey, Mita's friend, sweet friend. But no one could pronounce this growing up, and it became the bane of my existence. So I just decided to go by Mita, and it was just easier. But as I graduated, I decided I want to take my full name back, and I want to enter this new opportunity with my full name. And as I started at this company in my new assignment, my manager decided that he couldn't pronounce my full name, which, okay, I gave him the opportunity to call me Mita. He decided that he wanted to call me Muhammad. And he thought that was really funny. And so for 6 months, I endured this. I endured being called Muhammad. And what I would say to you all in a conversation we were having earlier, when I asked Kimberly how she likes to be referred to, and she said, "Thank you for asking, it's Kimberly." I would say to you, the biggest, the most important dignity and respect we can provide someone is the honor of their name. Because my name your name was given to you by somebody who had a lot of promise and hope for you and still does, just like I have for my children. So to not call someone by their name is just, or call them by a different name, is probably the most disrespectful thing you can do. And so I actually allowed for that to happen. And I actually, when he would laugh with other people about it, I would laugh along or I would be silent. And he'd be like, hey, Mohammed, it's time for forecasting meeting. Let's go. Hey, Mohammed, do you have those sales samples? And I didn't know what to do. And I ended up leaving that company was what ended up happening. But what I would say to you is this, is that I often think about this individual. This individual is still in the industry. I saw this individual 2 years ago at the Marriott Marquis at a very large event. And he was sitting at the table next to me and I froze. And I called my friend and I said, oh my God, he's here. And she said to me, you were so wildly successful and you're doing such amazing things. What are you scared of? And I was still scared. I did not want to see this person. I did not want to approach them and I did not want to even be seen by them. And so I, successfully avoided the event without interacting with this individual. I would say to you this, I think about this person from time to time, not as much as I used to. And I think about other instances and experiences that you'll hear, Kimberly's talked about and Zaman will talk about, is I just wonder where everyone else was. The perpetrator is the perpetrator. I can call myself a victim. I can call myself a target, whatever name I want to call myself. Where were his peers? Where were my friends? Where were the people who could have stopped that? But also either went along and agreed and laughed or were complicit in their silence. And so for me, what really energizes me in this important work and the work that many of us are doing is allyship. And allyship, actually, not even allyship, is to be an advocate. Stand up and do the right thing when no one else is looking and stand up for someone else. And that's what I would leave you with. Thank you for listening to my story.